This video was brought to you by Imprint. Today, Justin Trudeau is under further pressure after another by-election loss. A post by Elon Musk catches the attention of the US Secret Service, and Israel expands its war goals. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Tuesday the 17th of September, 2024. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's political future is on even shakier ground after his Liberal Party suffered another by-election loss in what was one of their safe seats. The by-election in the LaSalle-MR-Verdun riding was triggered by the resignation of Liberal MP David Lametti. The seat, which is in Montreal, Quebec, has been solidly held by the Liberal Party since it was redrawn in 2015, and parts of the riding had previously been the seat to former Liberal Prime Minister Paul Martin for some 20 years. It became clear overnight, though, just how tight a race it would be, with the Liberals, Bloc Québécois, and New Democratic Party all overtaking and falling behind each other as the results gradually came in. In the end, though, it was the Bloc Québécois, Quebec's main sovereigntist party, that secured victory in the seat, with 28% of the vote. The Liberal Party was fewer than 250 votes behind, on 27.2%, a drop of nearly 16 points since the last election, with the NDP coming in third with 26.1%. Now, Monday's by-election comes just a couple of months after the Liberals suffered a painful loss to the main opposition Conservative Party in the Toronto St. Paul by-election, with that seat having been held by the Liberals for more than 30 years. These recent by-elections are just the latest bad news for Justin Trudeau. Only 1/3 of Canadians approve of his government, according to a new Ipsos poll, and his party polls far behind the Conservatives, who look set for a strong victory at the next federal election, due by October 2025, though they are hoping to force one as soon as possible. Just this month, the Liberal Party's national campaign director stepped down, and the NDP pulled out of a supply and confidence agreement that it previously had with the governing Liberals. So, will Trudeau, now in office for nearly 9 years, call it quits? Well, despite the pressure, he says no and insists that he will lead the party into the next election. Ahead of Monday's by-election, he said, "I'm not going anywhere," adding that "I've got a fight to lead against people who want to hurt this country." Publicly, only one Liberal MP has called for Trudeau to resign, but the loss of another by-election will only add to the nervousness and disquiet behind the scenes. But as we've seen recently across the border in the US and across the pond in the UK, pledges to keep fighting are not always easy to keep. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more daily briefing tomorrow. Plus, if you want to support the channel like Stevens, then consider joining the TLDR Daily membership program for just $1.99. Next up, the US Secret Service said on Monday that it was aware of a social media post by ex-owner Elon Musk, which appeared to mock the lack of assassination attempts on US President Joe Biden and VP and Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. On Sunday, Musk posted to X saying, "And no one is even trying to assassinate Biden/Kamala," with a thinking face emoji. Musk then deleted the post, which many X users on all sides of the political spectrum viewed as potentially inciting violence against Biden and Harris. He then suggested that he'd been making a joke, saying, "Turns out that jokes are way less funny if people don't know the context and the delivery is plain text." But despite Musk's attempts to downplay his words, his post didn't go unnoticed by the US Secret Service. They said in a statement to Reuters, "The Secret Service is aware of the social media post made by Elon Musk, and as a matter of practice, we do not comment on matters involving protective intelligence. We can say, however, that the Secret Service investigates all threats related to our protectees." Next, Israel has expanded its war goals to include the return of displaced Israelis to their homes in the far north of the country, according to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, tens of thousands of Israelis have been evacuated from Israel's north since October 7th, due to near-daily cross-border exchanges of rocket fire between the Israeli military and the Lebanon-based Hezbollah group. Early this week, Netanyahu said the political security cabinet updated the goals of the war this evening so that they include the following section: the safe return of the residents of the north to their homes. His statement raises the prospect of full-on military action against Hezbollah, something that the international community has been trying to avoid. Earlier on Monday, however, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said that the possibility for an agreement is running out, as Hezbollah continues to tie itself to Hamas and refuses to end the conflict. Therefore, the only way to ensure the return of Israel's northern communities to their homes will be via military actions. Meanwhile, efforts to secure a ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel in Gaza continue, although their prospects do continue to look bleak. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is visiting the region, heading to Egypt today, but for the first time has no publicly planned stops in Israel. Next, let's move over to Europe, where Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered the regular size of the Russian army to be increased by 180,000 troops, totaling 1.5 million active servicemen. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, Putin had previously ordered 2 official increases to the number of combat troops, by 137,000 and 170,000 respectively. Putin's decision to increase combat troop numbers this time round comes as Russian troops are pushing forwards in eastern Ukraine's front line to suppress Kyiv's counteroffensive and force out Ukrainian soldiers in Russia's Kursk region. Moscow said on Monday that its forces had retaken control of 2 villages in Kursk from Ukraine. But despite these recent gains, and the fact that Russia has a population 3 times larger than Ukraine, Russia has still sustained heavy battlefield losses, and there's no sign of the war ending anytime soon. So increasing Russia's army by 180,000 people would make Russia's army the second largest in the world, leapfrogging the United States and India in terms of the number of active combat soldiers. And it will be second only to China in size, which has just over 2 million active duty service personnel. Finally, our uplifting story for today is about the return of a sacred cloak to the indigenous people in Brazil, after it spent more than 300 years in a Danish museum. The Tupinamba cloak, which is made from 4,000 feathers from the scarlet ibis bird, is 1.8 meters long and was looted during the Portuguese colonial period and had been on display in Copenhagen since 1689. Its return to indigenous leaders was made in a ceremony last week in Rio de Janeiro, with some 200 Tupinamba people having camped outside the building with drums to celebrate and see the cloak. Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, also attended the event, but his government still hasn't formally recognized the Tupinamba's rights to their native land. For context, Brazil is home to around 300 indigenous ethnic groups, but in late 2023, a controversial time marker law was introduced limiting the claims of indigenous peoples to their territory. Speaking at the ceremony last week, Lula said that he had vetoed the bill, but was overruled by the conservative-dominated National Congress. For Tupinamba's leaders, though, the Cape's return is another step towards recognizing indigenous people, their lands, and their rights. Although, that being said, there are still other similar cloaks still on display at several other museums across Europe. Fans of TLDR, like you, care about understanding the world around them. And that's where today's sponsor, Imprint, comes into play. Because if you care about building a life of learning, then Imprint is the app for you. It's a brand new way to learn, built from the ground up. And seriously, unless you've used the app before, you likely haven't experienced anything like this. That's because Imprint is beautifully illustrated and animated, creating a highly visual, bite-sized, and interactive learning experience. It's the perfect antidote to a world where social media tries to keep us mindlessly dopamine scrolling day in, day out. Their library includes courses on topics like psychology, history, philosophy, finance, productivity, and many more, as well as quick reads you can consume in a single sitting. In fact, I've been using the Essential Philosophy, Theories and Thinkers course, and it's been an excellent way to brush up on some knowledge from college that I genuinely thought was lost. And with all of the developments happening these days, from elections to AI to geopolitical tensions, it's been helpful to revisit some of the world's greatest thinkers. So make yourself feel better about your screen time, build a real habit of learning every day, and join the millions of people using Imprint. If you use the link in the description, the first 200 people will get 20% off an annual plan. Plus, they'll know you came from us.